heart and soul. I fell in love with you, heart and soul, the way a fool would do madly, because you held me tight and stole a kiss in the night, heart and soul. I
do that stuff, go run off and join, go off and join Golden Dawn or something. Yes. And what the principle of what I wrote was basically that, okay, no, we don't have, everybody's got their little specialization. Of course, we can't do everything. But just because we all have our specialization doesn't mean we're at odds or enemies with each other. It just means one group does one, for example, Quatuor Coronati does one thing. That's it, we're done. That does one thing. Shriners do something that seems opposite, but it's not. It's a different aspect of Masonry.
Yes, of course.
And if we realize that and everybody pulls together, everybody doing their own thing, of course, but everybody respecting each other's specialization.
Yes.
We all move in one direction because here's the talk. May as well do it this way. Here, for everybody that just joined, there was a bit of a mess up. The RSI talk is not today. I already explained everything to everybody at the front end. So it's just me today. And speaking on the roots of interjurisdictional Masonry is what we're falling into, actually. Because while we're on the topic of specializations, the topic presented itself. Because when we think of interjurisdictional Masonry, at least when I do, the first thing, by the way, for everybody involved, whenever I write it to the common denominator of general Masons, not just researchers, not just esoterists, not just ritualists, but everybody from the plumber to the president of a country. I don't care. I want my books to be understandable by everybody. So I tend to write simply, very dialectically. All right. So with that as a background, when we think of interjurisdictional Masonry, at least when I do, I think of the cool factor of visiting a lodge in another state or a country, be it Indiana, the state, or Brazil, the country, doesn't matter. There's something inherently interesting about it. There's, we're all Masons, we're all doing it differently. But of course, there's much more than that. Of course, the Grand Lodge sessions, while interjurisdictional in and of themselves, they normally have guests and official representatives from other jurisdictions attending, just because when you have a grand session and we're in amity with each other, we want to see what everybody's up to and, visit, see what's going on. And then there are international conventions and conferences like the European Masonic meeting where I met Brother Octavio, the International Conference of Garibaldi Lodges, and what they call over in the United States, the Masonic Cons, if you guys are familiar with the idea of what a convention is. It's you have your kind of a mixed atmosphere of academics and fun. But all of these things, regardless of how it's all wrapped up, they're all simply externals of what interjurisdictional Masonry is. True interjurisdictional Masonry begins in how we live the Masonic tenets on a daily basis in our home jurisdictions. And that goes back to the very basic things. There's several ways of saying it, depending on what rite the lodge uses. But I've really come across two: brotherly love, relief, and truth, which is what I've seen in the United States and several rites over here. But there's also liberty, equality, and fraternity. But they all boil down to the same thing, because you can't have liberty, equality, and fraternity if you don't have brotherly love, fraternity, relief, which is a stemming of equality, and truth, which guides everything.
Yes.
So regardless of how you put it, these are the basis of all things, including interjurisdictional masonry and all these little subgroups from the Shriners to the CBCS. Doesn't matter. We're all based in this. And none of these can stand, and none of these ideals can stand on their own. And the collection of them cannot be propagated without fully participating in our fraternity. Whether you call it a fraternity or an order, what it boils down is we're a group of men living under certain ideals, trying to make the world a better place by primarily making ourselves better men and then working outwards. We joined this order with the hope of being better men. And this goal is achievable, but a Mason must live by these tenets. Whether at the local level of, DC Gregorian Lodge, or at the international level at the Garibaldi convention, doesn't matter. You still live the same basics. The tenet of brotherly love is the first and most important of these three. It's the foundation of our fraternity. One notable way we can practically live this tenet is for the older brothers to teach the younger brothers our ways, mentoring, not just teaching the ritual, not just handing them a book of Albert Pike or Arturo Regini and saying, read this, kid, but actual taking the time out and mentoring the guy. Another way is to be open to one another's ideas and proper criticism. You'll not only see this on a local level where the new guy doesn't know what he's doing and the older guy has to, on the one hand, show him the proper way, but on the other hand, do it kindly with brotherly love. But you also see it now in the 21st century, especially, and this is a real hang up of mine, when we're on the internet and we'll see arguments break out over how different things are being where we're at, and the other side say, well, that's completely irregular. No, this isn't the point of brotherly love. The one way of doing it, of showing this brotherly love, which is the basis of all things, is to say, okay, you do it this way over there. We do it this way over here. I don't get it. I don't know why you do it. It doesn't make any sense to me. It looks completely crazy, but it works for you. Why does it work for you? Explain it to me. That's the innate understanding, whether it's through proper criticism or receiving a criticism or true dialogue. This is brotherly love at work. Or, as you'll see sometimes, if there's a brother down on his luck, lost a job or whatever, you'll see this especially in poorer lodges. Somebody who's in a good place financially will help the other brother who's not. He may not give him money, but he'll give him a job, which is even more ennobling. Knowing how to give that help, which will lead into relief, that's important also. And that leads us to the point of relief. Relief is the most obvious manner. Relief is the most obvious manner we live out our brotherly love. While it is all-encompassing, it specifically applies to our brothers, our widows, and orphans. Under this tenet, we are bound to do everything within reason to help them and assist them. However, we can't forget our responsibility to the world around us. Yes, there's the familiar. It's like helping your brother who's down on his luck. That's helping a Masonic widow, an orphan, and a brother. But that does not relieve us of extending outward into the world. Because again, what's the point of all this? Why be a Mason? Why do all this research? Who really cares? The point is to make ourselves better, to make the world better. And that internal movement of making ourselves better demands an expression. And the expression sometimes is helping the Shriners, helping the kids need surgery. Or up in the United States, there's what they call the Grotto that does dental work for kids with mental impairments. These are very physical. Our researches into esotericism and ritual and history are important, absolutely. But what does it matter if the old lady down the street can't feed herself? This is the question, this is where, again, that balance and apparent though false dichotomy comes in. And speaking of this leads us to what directs us. The tenet of truth. While it seems out of place, it is not. It's a silent partner in all this. Truth is the divine light we seek. Once we're firmly on the trail seeking after that light, our conscience opens wide to the responsibilities that we have taken upon ourselves in regards to God, ourselves, and to others. So while brotherly love is what we feel towards each other, relief is what we do, there's always the question of what is true love? What is proper relief? And that's what we seek in truth. That's what the volume of sacred law is there for, guys. That's what contemplation of all of our symbols are. And for the guys who go into other smaller orders, that's what all those obscure symbols are, to get us to contemplate on what the realities are. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? How are we doing it? All that boils down to truth. And those right there are the basis of everything, like I said, of what we do as Masons. And I don't think anybody argues with this. The wording, of course. The methods, yeah. But the basics, I don't think there's much argument. But what do these tenets have to do with interjurisdictional Masonry? Everything. In some ways, there's no difference between interjurisdictional Masonry and how we live our lives on a daily basis in our local communities and our lodges. In fact, I would argue that any difference between interjurisdictional Masonry and everyday Masonry are simply cosmetic. There really is no difference. If you're no good at home, you're no good out there. If you're no good out there, you're no good at home. It's just how you dress it up. Now, before I run out of the room in disgrace, let's see where I came up with this. When we step outside the borders of our jurisdiction, we're the same people we are at home. Okay, I'm wearing a suit and a tie and everything, giving out of respect for the lodge, of course. But as soon as this talk is over and the camera goes down, I'm switching over to blue jeans and a t-shirt. My clothing change, my person does not. Whatever image I'm projecting to you, the big question is it real or is it not? Who am I really on the inside? And that's what's important, and that's what must be kept in mind when talking interjurisdictional Masonry. Because me, whether I'm wearing my grand apron at a Grand Lodge session or I'm in jeans and a t-shirt at home, I'm that same person. And it's having that presence and knowledge of self that I think should govern us when we're out there in the big bad international world. And whatever our attitudes are internally and at home, when I turn off the camera, whatever my attitude is then, whether I tell it to you or not now, that's my attitude now. What my attitude was a half an hour ago, quite honestly, getting nervous, that's my attitude now. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I show on the camera. It doesn't matter what I project. I'm still that person then, now, in 2 hours. Doesn't matter. It's the same. Yet we force ourselves to sugarcoat it so that we're acceptable to others. And part of that is respect, of course, you know, but not always. So the question ultimately becomes, what exactly are we stepping into when we're doing all of this? That's what we have to define first. And I'll do so in a simple, even though it's a bit inaccurate, granted, terms. But it'll be good enough to get us through the lecture. As we know, individual lodges are part of a larger organization. Whether you call it Grand Lodge, Grand Orient, or an Order of Freemasons, all those terms boil down to the same thing. They're national fraternities that exist in and of their own right. Now, when I say national, of course, there are countries where they're two or more grand jurisdictions that have treaties with each other. For example, up in the United States, every state, not every state, but the vast majority, if not all states, have the state Grand Lodge. Like I'm a Grand Lodge of Illinois Mason, okay? But they also have a corresponding Prince Hall Grand Lodge. And we coexist in the same jurisdiction out of treaty, okay? And to make it even more confusing, every state in the Union has a Grand Lodge, plus Washington, D.C., plus Puerto Rico. We've got however many Grand Lodges, and we're all considered separate territories, as opposed to countries like here in Bulgaria, Portugal, whatever. There's one Grand Lodge per country. The United States has one Grand Lodge, technically two Grand Lodges per state, and we all get along and we all have our jurisdictions. Okay, but for the real broad brushstrokes I'm painting in, all these jurisdictions are national fraternities that exist in and of their own right. If Bulgaria or Illinois or Brazil or Portugal cease to exist tomorrow morning, all the other Grand Lodges that still exist, with or without them, irregardless of them, doesn't matter. They're each fully sovereign. They're all fraternities in their own right. Doesn't matter of anything else. And of course, like I said, whether you call them Grand Lodges or jurisdictions, it's all basically the same thing. Now, each jurisdiction adheres to certain principles that everybody sort of accepts that define regular Masonry and Masonic protocols, whose origins were historically established. Everybody kind of signed on for the same thing. Why? Because we need to agree on something. We need some basis to hang our hats on, so to speak. And involved with this, we have the old landmarks that are mentioned in regulation number 39 of the Grand Regulations that were compiled by Most Worshipful Brother George Payne, Grand Master of the Grand Lodge England. This is before Ugly existed, United Grand Lodge of England, in which were approved by the Grand Lodge in 1721 and published by Anderson in his constitutions in 1723. The regulation reads as follows. Every annual Grand Lodge has as its inherent power and authority to make regulations and offer these for the real benefit of the ancient fraternity and provided by the old landmarks to be carefully preserved. However, it was not until 1858 that someone, Albert Mackey by name, tried to write a definitive list of landmarks, and that's where the landmarks come in. This is the Grand Lodges saying, okay, these are what we hold as Masonic, is what is being Masonic. Okay, they differ, a lot of places have certain things in common. A belief in God, men only. There's certain base Bible on, a volume of sacred law open in the lodge. There's certain things we all agree on, but there's also variations on all this. Okay, because you have the ancient landmarks, and then you have landmarks that are appropriate to the other lodges. And then the interesting thing that I've found, you'll see jurisdictions where they refer to the landmarks, but they don't necessarily have an enumerated set of themselves. And Virginia over in the United States is one of them. Although, and this is taken right off of their website where they're explaining it. Although the Grand Lodge of Virginia has not adopted these 25 landmarks, they are substantially in accordance with our practice and teaching. So we have these rules that we're all, every Grand Lodge sets its ground rules, landmarks or bylaws, whatever you're going to call them. A lot of the times you'll hear landmarks, but like in the case of Virginia, we don't explicitly have them, but we follow them. These are our internal guidelines. You have the ancient landmarks, and then you have the additional landmarks. What jurisdiction decides that may want to interact with another jurisdiction, the two jurisdictions will basically look at each other's origins. Is there a lineage? Is it legitimate? The practices, the rituals, etc. And whatever else they deem important. And if they're satisfied in what they see, they'll acknowledge each other as conforming to the international standards of recognition and Masonic protocols. So, okay, you're doing this. Brazil, you're over there doing this. Illinois, okay, we're over here doing this. Let's kind of look at what each other are doing. Okay, swap. Okay, yeah, that looks right. That looks right. Okay, what you're doing looks Masonic to me. Is what I'm doing look Masonic to you? Yes. Okay. So we recognize each other as two Grand Lodges Masonic. We have recognition. We're in amity. And then we decide, okay, can we visit each other? Can we help each other? Do we leave each other alone and just say, yes, they're Masonic, they're good, but we're at a distance. All this, there's a whole, there are cut and dry things, but they're few and far between. Now, as I said, these two jurisdictions are in amity. Essentially, in everyday terms, they like each other. And as I said, they may or may not allow intervisitation and other rights and benefits. Now, just by way of simplicity, because this was originally written for an American audience, bear this in mind for the next section. The following are the standards of recognition as they're listed in the website of the Commission on Information for the Recognition Committee of the National Conferences of Grand Masters in North America. Again, going back to what I was just saying, legitimacy of origin. That the Grand Lodge requesting recognition has been lawfully formed by at least 3 just and duly constituted lodges, which means holding charters from one or more recognized Grand Lodges, or that it has been legally recognized by a Grand Lodge in fraternal relations with the Grand Lodge from whom the recognition is being requested. In other words, you got lodges that were properly chartered from somewhere, whether by you or somebody else, they're properly chartered. There's that lineage. However, when one or more lodges have been chartered by various recognized Grand Lodges within the same jurisdiction, International Masonic Protocol requires that those recognized Grand Lodges need to agree on the new new Grand Lodge being consecrated. In other words, so there's not a otherwise suspension or total removal of recognition of the Grand Lodges violating Masonic protocol can take place. Because the last thing you ever want is to have 2 Grand Lodges fighting over a territory, even when it's by accident. Accidents happen, misunderstandings happen. This is life. We're all human. We mean well, but mistakes, it happens, But we got to do our best to avoid that. So, but getting back to the original point, legitimacy of origin. Number 2, exclusive territorial jurisdiction except by mutual consent or treaty or treaty. Probably the most famous version of this I've seen is the State versus Prince Hall arrangement. Same territorial jurisdiction, but there's a treaty. Okay, barring cases like that, we all have our own jurisdictions. Again, America's different. It's got states. So it's not a national Grand Lodge, it's a state Grand Lodge, but that goes back to the history of how the country was formed. But the normal is usually 1 per country, unless, again, treaties. It is an independent self-governing organization, having Masonic authority within the governmental territory over which it assumes jurisdiction, whether country, province, or state, or other political subdivision, as I said, or else shares such exclusive territorial jurisdiction with another Grand Lodge by mutual consent and or treaty. Okay, again, it can lead to bad things if this isn't followed. And it's never nice. And number 3, first, legitimacy, 2nd, exclusivity, 3rd, adherence to the ancient landmarks, specifically. And this lists a couple, but it's very open. Specifically, belief in God. The volume of sacred law is an indispensable part of the furniture of a lodge. Got to have, whether it's a Bible, Quran, Torah, Gita, doesn't matter. Got to be something. Is an indispensable part of the furniture of a lodge, and prohibition of the discussion of politics and religion. These are the basics, most important. And this one is pretty self-explanatory. Now, with this as a basis, basically international Masonry is there, has these foundations to make sure that we're not fighting with each other. That's actually number two, but number one, that we have standards, and number one, that we have standards, number two, that we're not fighting with each other, coexisting properly with each other. Now that we've got this out of the way, we'll continue. Again, whether we're in our mother lodge or visiting a lodge halfway around the world, like literally we are today, we're all people. We all put our pants on the same way, and we all have our virtues, vices, and hangups. Because of this, we have these rules of behavior, not only in our daily lives, which we call etiquette. You don't grab a steak off your plate and eat it with your hands. We have etiquette. That's your daily rules. But also for our Masonic dealings, and the various Masonic rules are based on the tenets. So just as we have etiquette, we have rules in Masonry. They serve the same function. And while this is done, this does apply locally, the same basic attitudes apply to interjurisdictional Masonry. Again, going back to table manners, going back to lodge manners, the same ideas hold interjurisdictionally. Again, that we're good to each other, that we don't offend each other, that we have some sense of decorum. It's the same on the interjurisdictional level. To begin with, we see this in the protocols that we use when dealing between jurisdictions. We do these protocols so that brotherly love governs all our actions. But what is the connection between brotherly love that we have for each other and the protocol we follow while traveling outside our jurisdiction? Everything. Again, it can be a bit of a pain. These various practices ensure that we maintain the integrity of our Masonic family. We as Masons conduct ourselves as one large family, even though all these jurisdictions are independent, and even though we have our own little things, our little lodges, we are a family. The local lodge is the immediate family. The Grand Lodge is the extended family. The other jurisdictions are cousins, for lack of a better example. And as any family, there are certain things that we do as brothers and as a family. So we need to ensure that these things are kept in-house, that we do these properly, especially when our matters require confidence. We do certain things among ourselves. We're Masons. That's just how it is. We're brothers. We do stuff among ourselves that we don't do outside. These are in-house dealings. If I or my family are in dire need of help, I'm going to ask a brother for help, not a stranger. And conversely, we don't want to just have anybody come into our internal matters. So everything from the local lodge dealing up to the interjurisdictional dealing, we have to maintain this thought of family, even though it may not look it. When you go visit, is anybody here a lodge secretary? Anybody? Okay. Usually when you visit another jurisdiction, I, as just a private Mason, go to my lodge secretary. Hey, I need can you hook me up with a lodge over in Bulgaria? Okay, so my secretary goes to the Grand Secretary, filling out all kinds of paperwork. Grand Secretary, filling out paperwork, goes to the Grand Secretary of Bulgaria, filling out paperwork, goes to the local secretary, filling out paperwork. Lots of paperwork. It's real easy to lose the the sense of family in this paperwork, but that very paperwork is an aid to maintaining the family. Why? Because it keeps all of our dealings above board. It ensures that when I go from Chicago over to Bulgaria, that the brothers in Bulgaria know without a doubt in their mind, I'm a Mason. I'm a Mason in good standing. I'm not just some outsider. I'm not a guy from an irregular lodge. I am a Mason in good standing from Illinois. Why? Because there's a trust that's already there. There's an interdependence already there. There's a family already established that we don't have outside of Masonry. Yeah, the guy down the street could be a good guy. He may not. I don't know. But my lodge secretary said this guy from Chicago is a brother. So there's already something established. He's in our extended family. He's our cousin from Chicago. That's what all this interjurisdictional action by way of paperwork takes care of. It ensures that the brothers in the lodge I'm visiting, or should I say, ensures to them that I'm not somebody from the outside. We're in-house, we're in family, we're among our brothers. That if I need something, I can go ask them. If they need something, they can ask me and not worry, am I going to turn around and stab them in the back or air their dirty laundry out there in the public? Again, in-house. Also, there's another side. We all come from different cultures, different countries, different languages. People forget, it's real easy. It's okay for me, growing up over in the US, huge country. It's very easy to think that everybody does it the same way. Well, we got, 98 jurisdictions or 100, I don't know. We all basically follow the same right when we're doing the degrees, except for the guys down at Louisiana, and they kind of do their own thing. I think Pennsylvania does their own thing, but the rest of us all kind of do it the same. It's real easy to think if we all do it the same, everybody does it the same. But obviously we don't all do it the same. Of course, I'm a past master. First time I saw degree work in Bulgaria, I had no idea what was going on. The guy initiated asked me at the end, well, what do I think of it all? I said, brother, you know more than me. I have no idea what just happened. I'm just learning language on top of learning the degree work. You tell me what happened. That was the conversation. Okay. And again, you can only really have that among brothers. But with all these cultural differences, the international protocols buffer that. I'm fresh off the airplane, not knowing what's going on, but the international protocols set it up to where there's a warning built in. Hey, you got this American coming here, and he doesn't know what's anything. There's an assumption in all these protocols that we're all different. The universality of Masonry is not celebrated in its uniformity, it's celebrated in its diversity. And working through all these protocols, the respect of approaching another Grand Lodge from a distance, even though we're brothers, doesn't matter. I don't know your traditions, you don't know mine, So it's very easy to accidentally offend somebody in a lodge. We've all done it, But those protocols buffer that. They're the warning shot that goes ahead of you saying, hey, here's somebody that's coming. He's new. He's not gonna know what's going on. Probably won't know the language, but he is a true and trusty brother that does have your best interests in mind, and he would ask that in the same return, you have his in mind. And again, the protocols enable this. If I were just to walk into Brazil, walk in, sit down without having any warning to you whatsoever, I may offend you, you may offend me. Let's back it up. What am I even doing there? Am I a Mason? Am I a regular Mason? Am I in amity with you? We don't know. The interjurisdictional protocols take care of that on the front end, so you don't have to worry later. And this leads to the other thing. What are these differences within that we see in interjurisdictional masonry? Everything's different. Here's some glaring differences. Some places, volume of sacred law could be whatever the membership is. I've been in lodges where everybody knows what religion the other guy is. Why? So they know what volume of sacred law is to put on the master's desk. Well, we have Muslims, Jews, and Christians. Okay, there better be one of each. You go to a lodge down the street, there's only a Bible. Go to lodge the other way, there's only a Quran. Over in many of the American jurisdictions, I don't think all of them, but many, there has to be a Bible specifically on the altar. You can have others, but there better be a Bible. Even more extreme example that blows a lot of people's minds, and I'll see lots of fights over this on the internet. We're familiar with the appendant orders that have religious requirements, whether it's the SRIA or it's the Royal Order of Scotland, and I think CBCS requires you to be a Christian, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong on that one, though. There are also lodges that require you to be a Christian. If a jurisdiction works the Swedish Rite, those Swedish Rite lodges, you have to be a Christian, no discussion. And I'll see on the internet guys fighting back and forth. Oh, that's not regular masonry, that's clandestine, you only have to believe in God. Well, no, again, where are we? We're interjurisdictional. Goes back to the differences in cultures, goes back to brotherly love. That delicacy to say, okay, look, I don't get it. I don't know what you're doing. Why are you doing it? Why does it work for you? Well, because countries like Sweden and Norway, they have an official state religion. There you go. That's the history. United States, you don't. Many countries, you don't. Many countries are secular states. Okay, doesn't work there. But for the Swedes and the Norwegians, it does. And the other countries that do it as well, because I believe there's one or two others. And that's whether it's visiting another lodge or it's dealing with all these variations, what's it bring us back to? The tenets, the basic tenet, brotherly love. That's the only way we can handle this, is going back to the tenets. Yes, the paperwork's nice. Yes, it's good to pretend, oh, I'm educated because I know about all these different jurisdictions and all these rights. That's cool, but that doesn't fix things when you're sitting in a lodge not knowing what's going on, and what they're doing here really doesn't even look like masonry. What gets you through stuff like that is not your education. As I'm sitting here, I've been in one place where the first degree in masonry looked almost identical. There were two major differences. Outside of that, it looked like a Martinist degree. Really did not look like anything Masonic, but it was a perfectly regular jurisdiction and it was a Masonic degree. I'm sitting there going, this doesn't, education doesn't get you through this. Experience gets you through it a little bit, because experience is nice, but it won't change your internal prejudice. What gets us through this is brotherly love. I really don't get what those guys are doing in this room here. This doesn't look Masonic at all. But they're my brothers. It makes sense for them. I'm in a country, far, far away. And what works in Bulgaria or what works in Illinois or what works in Portugal, these are the three I'm mainly active in, won't work in this country here. Why? Because they're not Bulgarians, Portuguese, or Americans. They have their own thing. And what brings that understanding? It's the tenets. It's not education. It's that brotherly love. I owe my brothers. That wraps all this together, because it's that brotherly love that will drive me to learn about that other rite of Masonry, even though, I don't have any interest in it. I owe my brothers understanding. Why? Because they accepted me in this room. I better figure out what they're doing. Maybe it's too late. I'm on the plane home, Saturday night, but hey, maybe next time I come out, I actually have an idea what's going on. Love for study is good. Love for ritual is good. Brotherly love is what the basis is. This is what all ties it together. The brotherly love and relief and the truth. That's what holds us together interjurisdictionally. And this is what we have to engender within ourselves as Masons, interjurisdictionally. The basics. That is the root of interjurisdictional Freemasonry. Because when I hang up this phone, not phone, but when I turn off the camera, I'll still be John. You'll still be Alexander. You'll still be Igor. Doesn't matter. It's the brotherly love that I approach this with, or that you approach this with, or that you approach the next speaker with, or the next lodge you visit. It's the relief that we offer the brother when he's down on his luck or lost in a foreign country or doesn't speak the language. It's the truth that guides us universally in all this, that bonds us together. The paperwork is the external suitcase that carries us all and keeps it together and keeps us from imploding on each other. But it's not the important part. It's not the protocols that we all follow when we go to Grand Lodge meetings are how we express this. Well, what it boils down to is that brotherly love that we have for each other, that we've learned through that can't learn love truly, but we can understand it better through our search for truth, and we can express it through relief. And that, my brothers, that is my talk. Interjurisdictional Masonry. Good or bad, this is what it is. Does anybody have any questions?
Okay, thank you very much, brother. Right, worshipful brother John Meek. I want to read firstly, most worshipful brother Ranko Vujacic, the President and Master of the Regular Grand Lodge of Serbia, and also read worshipful brother Alen Lovrencic, is the worshipful master of the Quatuor Coronati Lodge of Croatia, and I greet all the other brethren, of course. Please, questions?
May I say something to the most worshipful, past most worshipful of Serbia? Most worshipful, if I may have something from you, I have a special personal connection to Serbia. I actually wrote an article in a Serbian/English periodical a number of years ago. If Brother Jovanovic can give me your email, I'll send that to you.
Sure.
Thank you, brother.
With great pleasure.
Sorry, guys. Now, any questions?
Brethren, please, you can open the microphone and make the questions.
Questions, criticisms, angry crowds?
Can I make a question?
Yes.
Under which circumstances these good principles of interjurisdictional Masonic work can be useful to solve or try to solve conflicts, political conflicts between two different countries or two different jurisdictions?
Under which, okay, how exactly are you asking that? Because my gut reaction is under all circumstances, because what does it boil down to? When there's okay, this is me, all this is me speaking of my own opinion, okay? Not representing anybody, just me, my crazy thoughts. Anytime you have a fight, doesn't matter, Masonry, me and the wife, me and my buddies, anytime there's a fight, it all boils down to one or both are lacking in love for each other. Okay. This is coming off nasty, but bear with me a second. What it always boils down, not always, because there are honest to God misunderstandings. People make mistakes. We're from different countries, right? So we're bound to make mistakes. What I do culturally as American, some of this stuff is very offensive over here in Bulgaria or whatever. It doesn't matter. That's how I grew up with. It's still offensive in some cases here. And what I do, there's some things where I've really put my foot in my mouth, whether it's here or Serbia or whatever. I've made mistakes simply not knowing. And you have fights based on misunderstandings, you know, especially when there's language involved. I'm originally from the United States. My wife's originally from here. English is my native language. Bulgarian is hers. Anytime you're dealing with a second language, doesn't matter which one you're speaking, somebody is bound to say something the other person doesn't understand. You have misunderstandings. You have guys that you have guys that are just in a bad mood, or they're just miserable human beings. That's where the lack of love comes. But then there's also misunderstandings that naturally arise. How do these principles fit in? Easy. You or I, okay, I'll put it on me. I'm not responsible for your actions or your reactions, right? Or should I say, I'm not responsible for your reaction. I'm only responsible for how I do things, okay? If I come off mean, that's on me. If I make a mistake and I fail to apologize for it, that's on me. Okay, so I have to bear in mind on my side, irregardless of what the other guy's doing, I have to bear in mind on my side, this, no matter what, I can't stand this guy, doesn't matter. That's my brother. No matter what, he's my brother. No matter what I think of the guy, he's my brother. My obligation to him is to give him the benefit of the doubt. Okay? If he's nasty to me, I have to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe I said something wrong. My Bulgarian is not that good, for example. My Portuguese is derivative off of my Spanish, which I'm losing, you know, as days go by. So what if I said something wrong? What if I said something nasty to begin with? Why? Because I'm tired or whatever. I have to give the other guy the benefit of doubt. Maybe I did something wrong. That's how brotherly love should work, at least. And if you have two guys trying to do that, saying, okay, regardless of what the other guy does, I have to treat him with brotherly love. I don't care what he does, I have to love him. If you have two guys doing that, that would go a long way to solve these problems. And if somebody doesn't matter. I'm still responsible for how I act. He can be nasty, he can just be whatever. I still owe him the courtesy to give him the benefit of the doubt. That doesn't mean you roll over, doesn't mean you're a pushover and let somebody abuse you. No, I'm not saying that. So, brother's nasty with you, that's the other side of it. Treating each other with love and giving each other benefit of the doubt is working on the front end. What about on the back end? You know, what happens after the offense is made? One of the two guys, if not both, one of them has got to have the presence of mind to say, hey, wait, whoa. This discussion is getting really out of hand. This is turning into a fight. One of us has got to back down before this gets worse. Somebody that's on the back end. If it's already going in a bad direction, somebody's got to back down. And it may come in a lot of places, it comes off as a sign of weakness. I can't do this because I'll look weak. If you look weak, who cares? That's your brother you're getting ready to call a filthy name. What's better, to look weak or to call your brother a filthy name? I think it's better to look weak, back off, let the tempers cool. And then once everybody's calmed down and can think like a normal person, go back, okay, you calm? Yeah, I am too. Where were we? That's how these principles apply in fights. One guy, if one or both guys can't give the other guy the benefit of the doubt, one or both have to back down, say, this is out of hand. Okay, let's cool our jets. Let's think about this a minute, because once I say a word, I can't take it back. You know, and the other thing that these principles can contribute to international fights and is apologies. Apologies are the hardest things in the world to do, but sometimes they're needed. And we're all guys. We don't want, oh, if I apologize, I look like I'm weak. No, you know what? You look like you made a mistake and you realize the mistake and you're man enough to admit it. That's how it is. Always putting your brother, how this principle works in international fighting is somebody's got to realize at some point, that's my brother I'm yelling at over there. That's my brother I'm doing whatever to over there. I got to stop. If he's not going to stop, I got him. One of us has to. Does that answer your question?
A quick comment.
Yep.
When I made the question, I had in mind the first peace treaty between Egypt and Israel that legend said started with interjurisdictional works between Britain from the two countries.
Okay. I am not involved in that part of the world at all. I'm sorry, I can't comment. Yes, Brother Rodko, or Most Worshipful, I see.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that one I don't know anything about. Yes.
If I understood the question of our brother Julio Stean correctly, you were asking, Julio, that if there is a problem between two countries, what the brethren can do, I mean, political problem, two countries don't get along. What can the brethren do in order to settle this crisis? Is it correct what you thought? This is how I understood your question. Okay, so I want to give you the best example, I think, and that is Yugoslavia. So we used to be one country, we used to have one Grand Lodge. And unfortunately, in the 90s, through different civil wars and atrocities that we did one to the other, and we actually now have 6 countries and 6 Grand Lodges. However, although even today, after so many years, there are certain countries, I would say in the Balkans, or former Yugoslavia, as you may call it, that do not politically get along with each other, it's the brethren that really, really get along with each other. We have annual communications, and let's say if we have in Belgrade, all other countries come along, from Croatia, Slovenia, North Macedonia, Montenegro, and so on. But, of course, it takes some time. So just immediately after the war, of course, you cannot all of a sudden be, we are brothers. But what is important is the trust. And we do trust each other. And we know that, as Brother John Meek was saying, we are brothers. So we have to find a way, like in any family, 2 brothers have to get along one day. And I'm happy to report that really, I mean, we are actually, I must say, we are even stronger. We have stronger bonds than before living in one country. Because now everybody has his own way. And I think it's wonderful. And it's thanks to Masonry that we have very my common communications, meetings, and so on. And even help other countries, you know, if there is a problem, we go there, try. I can give you an example that we had exhibitions in Serbia. We were exhibiting Freemasonry in another country, you know, making an exhibition in a country where it is not possible to do it for whatever political reasons, but we did it in our country so that the brethren can come over, have a look, and so on. So to put it in a few words, it is the brethren of different countries, or let's say the countries that do not get politically along, that have to do it themselves by contributing to the society around them. And I would say even with positive reactions towards the other country, because you know the brethren, you know that they're good people, they're your brothers. Should also trust each other. However, very often the political problems are not real problems. They are sometimes made, I say from our own experience, just for the politicians to keep their position. I hope I have said enough. Thank you.
If I can pop in, thank Brother Vujicic.
Correct.
Brother Stern, I'm very sorry I didn't understand your question, but Brother Uncle, you've seen this. One of the most amazing things I've seen here in Europe. I was at one meeting, and there were brothers from countries whose countries literally hate each other, and they were all good to each other. That was the most amazing, and I'm serious. I mean, I was sitting in the room, I was in the part of the room where it was all the Grand Lodge guys, and sitting there looking, I'm like, this guy's from here, this guy's from here, this guy's from here. They hate each other, but everybody's getting along. And at the party afterwards, everybody was getting along. Over in the States, you hear all the stories, and everybody, I understand, but to see guys like this and say, if these guys can do it here, what's wrong with everybody else? No, I mean, seriously. And I've actually brought that point up in the Masonic groups on Facebook where brothers are fighting back and forth. I said, hey, hold on. Why are you guys fighting like this? Well, I said, look, I've been in rooms where countries hated each other. And you're fighting like this over some stupid comment? Where's your tolerance of each other? I mean, that one meeting, I think will be an example to me for the rest of my life. So.
Well, the worst case scenario, if I could say so, is that none of the two lodges wants to get to be the first one to approach the other. In that case, you look for a third one, for a, let's say, honest broker, again, a Grand Lodge that could bring you together.
Yeah.
So because I can understand if the two countries are fighting politically, we're talking about politics, that the brothers do not feel comfortable to be the first one to approach the brothers from another country. So find a common denominator, a Grand Lodge that will bring you together.
Yeah.
Or
somebody both sides like. Yeah.
Or what you can do, what we have been doing here in a country, in the Balkans, for example, where there are two Grand Lodges. One is regular and the other one is irregular. But they're doing all very good jobs. So how do you bring them together? By organizing, let's say, a lecture provided by none of the two lodges. You just invite a foreigner to give a lecture on the subject of Masonry, and they're both interested. So the irregular and regulars put them together. Again, to give you an example, in what we did in Serbia, in the city of Niš in the south, the brethren have renovated the synagogue that was abandoned, and we made a Masonic exhibition there. The regular Grand Lodge of Serbia is the only one recognized, but there are 3 or 4 other Grand Lodges that are doing their job. So we invited them to come over because I knew they would love to come, but they are just sort of, I wouldn't say afraid, but I don't want to be seen coming to our exhibition. But if you invite them like any other citizen, like, why don't you come over? So what happened at the end, now we have these irregular brothers who are with us. They became regular through the normal process.
Yeah.
So there's always a way, if you think of it.
Well, yeah, and a lot of it does boil down to personal contact. That's the thing. Right. I brought a brother over from the irregular Romanian Grand Lodge to the regular Romanian Grand Lodge, just because I've known him forever, and we talk. It's like, well, I'd like you to give a talk in one of my lodge meetings. I can't. I'd love to. I can't. Why are you still over there? Why don't you just join the regular one, for crying out loud? It all boils down to personal contact, because that's the other thing. A lot of regular, it seems to me, and I could be very wrong. It's like, regular masonry, yes, we're regular, not arguing. A lot of guys forget that those irregular guys down the block, why are they, the question has to be asked, why are they irregular? Did they not know there was a regular lodge? I know guys, I have a couple of very good friends that joined irregular lodges because they didn't know about the regular one. There could be conflicts of personality and everything else, because let's not forget these irregular Masons, a lot of them are just good salt of the earth men, no different than us. And that's a member of the irregular Grand Lodge over here, if I remember right. Is he a big guy? No, they got to him first. He's happy there. I can talk to him all I want. No, I like my lodge, But I think a lot of that has to do with personal contact. Remember, they're men like us, no difference. As far as quality of character, yes, they're irregular. Yes, we can't sit in lodge. Yes, there's this or that problem with it. Not arguing those points at all. But the quality of men over there is often, not always, but often identical. So, anybody else?
Yes, brethren. Any other question, please?
May I talk something?
Yes, Brother Laszlo, please.
Okay. First of all, I thank you very much, Brother John Meek, for the presentation. It's always interesting to hear people, and you are a very mixed people because you are from the United States and you are in Bulgaria. And so we have also some interesting connections because, as you know, myself and our lodge that I am connected is a Hungarian origin lodge working in Brazil, so the resurrection. By the way, Brother Alexander Jovanovic is from our lodge. It's a symbolic lodge, of course, and also Alex Faria, who is also here. But I would like to make some observations. The very first observation is not directly related to your speech, but just to give a recognition to Brother Ranko, because he demonstrated here very clearly that he is not only a diplomat in the profane life, but he is also very diplomatic in the Masonic front. So I congratulate him. That's a really good brotherhood in the real life and the Masonic life.
Köszönöm szépen.
Thank you. And the point is that another point that has been raised is about the irregular lodges, that we talk that it's not completely regular, and Brother Ranko told that sometimes you invite them. So we have these kind of things in Brazil too, because we have for many years, the Grand Orient was the only regular before the United Grand Lodge of England and the Grand Lodge of São Paulo, which we are from now. It was recognized because of the idea of owning one Grand Lodge in each country or in each territory. But now it's something different. And we know about many irregular lodges that are mainly, they are great Masons, they are doing good work, but unfortunately by some bureaucratic mistakes, they are not recognized. So we know about this. I know a little bit more about the Hungarian Grand Orient, and there are many other places. So, but another observation that's really for Brother Mix is that maybe you have been looking that in one country having many Grand Lodges. This is not as unusual than you're thinking. I was just making a little calculation. In Australia, you have 6 Grand Lodges, in Canada, 10, in Colombia, 6, in Mexico, 12, And in Brazil, we have more than 30, if you consider the Grand Lodge, then Grand Orients, and the Grand Orient has also local Grand Lodges. So it's not, of course, when you have a big country, when you have a big area, and when you have a division in the country of provinces or states or whichever, that is more common. And but what is the other question? I think that is more important that we talk, and you mentioned it. How universal is the Freemasonry? We believe that we are universal, we are a fully brotherhood, but we have signs, unfortunately, and I can speak very, very comfortable on that, because not only myself, I have 50 years, more than 50 years in the Freemasonry, but all my family from back ancestries have been in the Freemasonry.
Wow.
So I think that unfortunately, some differences are. We know that, as you mentioned, that is very clear, and for me, it's a very uncomfortable, at least, of the Swedish and the Nordic Grand Lodges, that they establish to be a Christian to enter. That's the first step that should be avoided, because this is not a real brotherhood. Okay, so it's even here in Brazil, we have something which has been at least discussed. It's not a big problem, but it's we have lodges here that only have people in the, how you say, in some special profession, or even we have lodges here in Brazil, in São Paulo even, that are only Jewish. It's not forbidden actually to enter any other people, but basically it's one of the important features to enter in. And I can talk also very comfortable, because I am Jewish lodges in São Paulo, for instance, they use even the, you know, okay, that's part of the lodge. Every lodge may have some special uses. But I thought about also that we know the Prince Hall in the United States. Unfortunately, we heard, I am not sure how is this now, but there was, because it was a separation of the blacks that in the very past was more understandable because of the uses and tradition that time. But even now, they are a little bit separated and not always very recognized. So I don't feel that the Freemasonry it's 100% universal. The brotherhood is what we tell, but not always what every Freemason considers, even if they have some good excuses. And lastly, what I want to mention is that when you have enemies, let's say in the words that we told between countries, one of the best examples of the real between enemies is what is for the independency fights in South America. We know that the most of the leaders for the independence were brothers, and they meet each other. They had good relationship, but they were in opposite sides in the fighting. So that's a very important and a good example of real brotherhood in enemies, in countries or enemy causes. So I thank you very much. It was very interesting, and that's it, what I want.
Thank you. Most worshipful.
Could I add something? Talking about the Swedish Christian lodges, I'm not sure if this is correct, but what I have heard that the Swedes have 2 lodges in Finland, Swedish lodges, where they accept Muslims.
That's way outside of my knowledge.
And now what I'm not sure if these brethren then from those Finnish lodges Swedish lodges in Finland are allowed to go to Sweden and attend lodge. This I'm not sure, but definitely the Swedes have made an open door through Finland to accept Muslim brethren, or let's say other religions, not only Muslims, but non-Christians. Let's put it non-Christians.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's that, like I said, that I don't know about. It's certainly possible. The Scandinavians are I mean, I know they exist. I know brothers from up there. I know the basic. To their machinery and how they're doing stuff, I honestly, I don't know.
Reference, somebody else, some other question, please. Nobody else? No questions? No observations? Okay. I thank you very much, Brother Right Worshipful Brother John Meek, for your conference. Nice to see you. Thank you very much. I wrote you in the chat.
Yeah, I got it, I think.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes. Okay. We'll be in contact.
And brothers, thank you.
Yes, please.
Yes, please. And brothers, thank you very much for having me. Sorry for the misunderstanding at the beginning. Brother Jovanovic, I will fill you in. But again, thank you very much for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For a very nice talk.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Have a good day, guys.
Have a nice day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Nice to see you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Nice to see you.
Bye-bye, my friends.
Ciao.
Yeah.
Ciao, ciao.